Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you to the Introduction to the Rules of Golf PowerPoint presentation. This PowerPoint will be conducted by the Iowa PGA Section and the Iowa Golf Association, specifically for the Iowa High School Athletic Association coaches and players, as well as the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union coaches and players. We are excited to be able to bring this to you today and provide some valuable information on some rules of golf for the 2018 season. My name is Tess Gowdy. I'm the Assistant Executive Director for the Iowa PGA Section. These are the current members of our Iowa PGA staff: Greg Mason, who's our Executive Director; Casey Harvey is our Tournament Manager; Brady Sharkey is our Junior Golf Coordinator; and Kevin Quinn is our Communications Coordinator. We're excited to have the Iowa Golf Association work with this PowerPoint presentation with us this year. We have Chad Pitts, Executive Director, and Caitlin Hoganson, the Director of Member Services and Women's Golf, will be co-panelists with myself, and we will be presenting on some of the rules. Their staff also includes Clint Brown, who's the Director of Communications and Marketing, as well as Bill Dickens, Senior Director of Administration, and Nate McCoy, Manager of Championships and Course Rating. Here's a little bit more about the Iowa Golf Association. They are located in Ankeny, Iowa. They are an association of member clubs and individual members. They recently merged with the Iowa Women's Golf Association, and some of their programs include handicapping, course rating, running state championships, which include the junior amateur and girls junior, as well as dealing with some rules of golf and amateur status. They also have some scholarships available for juniors, so I encourage you to check out their website at iowagolf.org and find more about them online. We're going to briefly touch about the 2019 rules changes that will be going into effect starting January 1st, 2019, only in the sense that we will not be discussing the new changes for January 1st of 2019. We will be considering the 2018 rules of golf that will be in effect as of January 2016. So to help alleviate any confusion, we will not be discussing the proposed rule changes that are going to be coming into effect here in 2019, but the Iowa Golf Association, as well as the United States Golf Association, and our office as well will be working hard this fall, once the season is over, to make sure that we are providing some information for you to get up to speed for January 1st, 2019. The Iowa PGA Foundation is our charitable arm of the Iowa PGA Section, which utilizes the game of golf to positively impact lives through charitable giving, with emphasis on scholarships, junior golf, and injured veterans. All of our junior programs are now housed under the Iowa PGA Foundation, which is a 501c3, and we're super excited to have that happen as of last year. Here are a few programs that we have available for juniors and high school players. All of these are available at iowapga.com. We are going through a new website transition. We're super excited about the new look and hopefully have that available the first part of next week. So you can find out more information about all of this online. A couple of keynote items that we have here is we are doing a spring series for 2018 where we'll have 2 events in April and 2 events in May. And we're also excited to be able to partner with the Iowa High School Athletic Association to help administer their state golf championships for all 4 classes this year. We started last fall in a kind of a pilot program with the 4A championship, and we're super excited to be able to assist in all 4 championships this spring and fall for the boys. The Junior Tour celebrated 20 years last year, and the Pee Wee celebrating 15 years this year, and we're super excited to be able to provide a nice tee gift for the membership. Last year, all members received a nice logoed collared shirt, and we're able to provide new members with the same gift this year, and returning members will receive a nice new gift. But this is a great value and a nice item to be able to provide in celebration of these tours being in existence for this many years. Also, to help celebrate with our 15 and 20-year annual memberships, we have a membership discount for any new members, $10 off. If you want to use the code NEW 2018 juniors, you will receive $10 off your membership registration. So we encourage you to take a look at that and play more golf this summer. And finally, many of you coaches already know of this program that we have, the affiliate program with the Golf Pass. It's a great way for your high school programs to make some money. We will give each high school that's interested in participating a unique coupon code that they can use to pass along to their family and friends to get $10 off the Golf Pass affiliate program. And then you get 50% of the revenue that is generated. So the customer gets $10 off, either 45 or 40, whichever program they decide to choose, and then we split the profits with the high school golf teams as a fundraiser to help get you guys a little bit more money for anything you might need for your season. Just give us a call in the office if you're interested. We have several high schools that are already participating in that program, and it's just a way for us to give back to you guys and help you raise a little funds. All right, so now we're going to get into the introduction to the rules and some of the rules that we'll be covering today. This is a quote that one of our staff members found, and it was kind of something we wanted to pass along to remind you that the rules are meant to help you play the game of golf, not necessarily punish you for playing it. I know sometimes it seems like penalties are not the best part of playing the game of golf, but we're going to try to help you understand and learn the rules a little bit better and see how they can help you and not necessarily punish you. The presentation that we will do today will be basically in two parts. We'll be going over some definitions in the beginning and just a quick introduction on how to use the rules book and some of the definitions. And then the second part of the presentation, we will actually be reviewing a few of the rules that are kind of key that we feel that you will utilize many times out on the golf course. So we hope that you will find this valuable. Two great principles that we feel can start the motion and process is to be able to put your ball in play at the start of the hole, play only your ball, and do not touch it until you lift it from the hole. And then the second is to play the course as you find it. Seems pretty simple, but if we can just kind of lean on these two principles, it's able to get us around the golf course a little bit easier. We wanted to touch briefly on the pace of play and some tips and some procedures. We've been asked to kind of review some of these things. It's kind of important for all players to make sure that they're properly implementing these pace of play procedures and tips. It just makes everything go faster on the golf course if everyone is ready to go when it's their turn, and limit practice swings and things of that nature. We just can't stress enough how important some of these tips are, so we're going to go briefly through them. One of the most important things that you can remember or think of is if you're unable to find a rules official and you're not sure how to proceed, Rule 3-3 is a good way to continue play. And we'll review 3-3 here in just a little bit, but it basically gives you an option to play two balls. And if you're not sure if you get relief or what the situation is, it kind of helps you continue play and not hold up play too much if you can't get a rules official there right away. Some of the other tips are to be aware when it is your turn or will be your turn to play, knowing where your competitors' balls are in relation to yours, and be ready to go when it is your turn. In addition to that, just be reading your putt while others are putting. Some of these things can only shave off maybe 2 or 3, 4, 5 seconds, but when it all adds up, it's several minutes up to an hour of pace of play time. One of the things here is if you have to ask if it's your turn, then you probably should have already hit already. So again, sometimes if we have a player, it's always good to be courteous and wait for them to hit if they're trying to take relief from a cart path or they're trying to figure out exactly where the ball maybe went into a hazard. But ready golf is okay if somebody is trying to get some relief options. If you're ready to go and you'd like to go, it's okay to kind of continue moving down the fairway, walk fast, have a purpose. It does help everything in the long run. The next item here is limit practice swings and keep pre-shot routine to a minimum. This is probably the best way to shave some time off of a round. Many times we see juniors taking 4, 5, 6 practice swings. Their pre-shot routine is pretty extensive and takes quite a bit of time. It's important to be ready to go 1 or 2 practice swings, have a short practice shot, pre-shot routine, and that really does help save some time and keep everybody moving quickly on the golf course. Another item that's pretty simple but not always followed would be to fill out your scorecards on the next teeing ground and not at the putting green. The important thing here is to not heed play behind you. If there's players behind you, they cannot advance onto the green if you're standing on it filling out scorecards. But we encourage you to go to the next teeing ground, get ready to go, and start continuing moving down to the next hole. And finally, if you're unsure about a lost ball or potential out of bounds ball, please play a provisional ball. And we will go over that a little bit more later on, but it's very important. We never like to see juniors walk back or any player walk back to the tee. It just adds some time onto the round. So make sure you're playing a provisional ball if the rule permits, and keep moving forward. We're going to review some etiquette items here briefly. Again, pretty simple things, but it's always good to review and make sure that we're following some of these good procedures. Golf is one of the only games where we are expected to call penalties on ourselves. We don't always have a rules official or a committee there to help us immediately when we might need some help. So it's important to be able to, in your group, to help each other out. Make sure that if you have information that could potentially help a player on procedure for relief or not sure what's going on, make sure that you're providing that information and helping out when you can. Safety, some of these are pretty simple as well, but just make sure that you're not standing too close or in position to get hit by a club or a ball. Make sure you're courteous to those that you're playing with. Obviously, no talking when others are playing or walking around another player's line. And finally, make sure that you're taking good care of the golf course, rake bunkers, fill divots, fix ball marks, things of that nature. That's the easiest way that we can provide some good etiquette out there on the golf course. The next section here, we're going to talk about how to use your rules of golf book. It's not important for you to memorize the rules of golf book. I think the most important thing that you can do is to know how to use the rules of golf book, and that will help you get the information you needed when you do need it. The first section of the rules of golf book is etiquette and pace of play. We reviewed those a little bit here. The second section is definition, which begins on page 30. And that'll be the next area that we talk about a little bit more in depth and go over a few definitions. And then the third section is rules of play, which will be some of the rules that we'll be going over today. And then the last area is page 205 to 231. These are great areas to go and look at for quick reference. It might be able to help you find the rule that you're looking for a little bit quicker if you can't remember what the number is. These rules of golf books are available at usga.org. They are complimentary if you would like to purchase one. I know that high school coaches and other organizations are possibly able to get more than one copy, but these are great. We give them out for our junior tour members, but if you'd like to get one online, just go to usga.org, and that'll help you out to have it in your bag when you're ready to play. Using your rules book. All defined terms are in italics and are listed alphabetically in the definition section on pages 30 to 45. We're going to go over a few of these key definitions just to kind of get things going today. It's important to maybe review some of the definitions at the beginning of a season or prior to going out and playing. It can help you understand the rules of golf a little bit better if you understand some of the definitions that are included in those rules. Abnormal ground condition is any casual water, ground under repair, or hole, cast, or runway on the course made by a burrowing animal, reptile, or bird. Casual water is any temporary accumulation of water on the course that is not in a water hazard and is visible before or after the player takes his stance. The important thing here to note is that dew and frost are not casual water. Ground under repair, also sometimes just known as GUR, is any part of the course so marked or declared by the committee. All ground and any growing thing within the GUR are part of the ground under repair. And then the definition of a hazard is any bunker or water hazard. Abnormal ground condition, two key types up there would be casual water or ground under repair. And then the other things are not as often found when we're playing, but casual water and ground under repair, you'll have those happen quite a bit when you're playing golf. A couple other key terms here would be lateral water hazard. This is a water hazard or part of a water hazard so situated that it is not possible to drop a ball behind the water hazard in accordance with Rule 26-1B. And the key term here is lateral water hazard. We're going to review this rule here a little bit later in the presentation. But most of the time, lateral is not going to be where you're going to be able to stand behind the hazard and drop. So that's important, kind of understand the difference between a lateral water hazard and a regular water hazard. A lost ball is deemed lost if it is not found or identified by the player within 5 minutes of the search period. The player has made a stroke at a provisional ball. The player has put into play another ball under stroke and distance penalty. The player has put another ball into play under Rule 18-1, 25-1C, or 26-1B, or the player has made a stroke at a substitute ball. We will be going through lost ball as well a little bit later down into the presentation, but these are again a couple of key definitions that are in the front of the rules book that are good to review prior to the season. Loose impediments are natural objects including stones, leaves, twigs, and the like, worm, insects, and the like, and the casts and heaps made by them. They are not fixed or growing, solidly embedded, or adhering to the ball. Nearest point of relief, the reference point for taking relief without penalty from interference by an immovable obstruction, abnormal ground condition, or wrong putting green. And finally, obstructions is anything artificial, including artificial surfaces and sides of roads and paths and manufactured ice, except objects defining out of bounds, including walls, fences, stakes, and railings, and any part of the movable objects that is out of bounds, and any construction declared by the committee to be an integral part of the course. This is just a graphic here that is good to explain the whole area with any boundaries established by the committee that is considered the course. They include the teeing ground, the putting green, a hazard, and through the green. Through the green is a term that you will hear quite a bit through the rules book and out on the golf course, and that is the whole area of the course except the teeing ground and the putting green of the hole being played and all hazards on the course. All right, so now we're going to get into some of the overview of the rules that we'll cover in the PowerPoint presentation. There are 34 total rules in the Rules of Golf book, but we're only going to cover these today, and basically we're covering the ones we feel that are experienced most by the players out on the golf course, or potentially have the most areas of uncertainty or need potential clarifications. So I'm going to be covering Rule 3, stroke play, and Rule 8, advice, and then I'll be turning it over to Chad, who'll be covering Rule 13 and 15, and then Caitlin will be covering Rule 18 and 20, and then she'll kick it back to me to talk about 25, 26, 27, and 28. Rule 3-3 is doubt as to procedure in stroke play. I kind of like to refer this to a golfer-friendly rule. It really is a way for the player, if they're doubtful of their right or the correct procedure during the play of a hole, they may, without penalty, complete the hole with 2 balls. There's a couple procedure elements here that are important, and that's what we're going to cover a little bit here. As you can see in this graphic, this particular player thinks that they might be in ground under repair, but it is not marked that way. So under Rule 3-3, they have the option to play 2 balls and then report back to the committee to see if they do actually get relief from this situation. So the competitor in this situation should announce to his fellow marker or competitor that they intend to play 2 balls and which ball they wish to count if the rules permit. So those are the 2 key procedure elements there, where they need to announce that they'd like to play 2 balls because they believe that they might be able to get relief from the situation. And then they also need to declare which ball they would like to score with if the rule permits. And that's the second part that sometimes gets left out a little bit, is that players may know that they have the option to play 2 balls, but they really need to be able to say, if I get relief from this situation, I'd like to score with that ball versus the original ball. The final procedure element into this rule would be once you're done playing, to go in and check with the committee or the rules officials to let them know what happened and make sure that you're scoring with the correct ball. If you fail to do any of these two procedure elements, then you would be disqualified. So it's important to make sure you're putting these two procedures into place. Rule 8 is the advice. It's about advice, and basically it's a general knowledge for information on rules, distance, position of hazards or flags that's on a putting green. That's all considered general knowledge, and it's okay to share that information within your group. It is not considered advice, that information or general knowledge. Rule 8-1 does talk about during a stipulated round, the player must not give advice to anyone in the competition playing on the course other than his partner, or ask for advice from anyone other than his partner or either of their caddies. And that's where players sometimes get into problems with advice. So for the high schools, I know they have specific rules for coaches and who's able to talk to players and who is not able to talk to players and give advice. So the key terms here or policies to think about is your teammates within your high school are not considered your partner in this situation. Any advice that you would get from your teammates and or spectators or anyone that's not allowed to give you advice per the high school regulations, you would be in violation of this particular rule. So the big thing here is general knowledge, distance, rules, position of hazard, things of that nature are okay. Anything else is not permitted. All right, well, I am now going to turn it over to Chad with the Iowa Golf Association. He is going to cover the next couple of rules that we have set up.
Thanks, Tess. Just, you can hear me okay, Tess?
I can.
Okay. So I'm getting to the privilege of covering rules 13 and 15, and these are definitely pretty big rules if you want to talk about every single part of them, but we're going to try and strip it down and talk about the most important aspects of each of these rules for the purposes of this webinar. And before I move on, I just want to say quick how excited we are to be involved with this and partner with the Iowa Section PGA. And if you guys do ever have any questions when it comes to rules issues at any of your events, and feel free to reach out to the Iowa PGA certainly, but feel free to reach out to the Iowa Golf Association as well. You can find all of our contact info on iowagolf.org. So with that, let's go into rules 13 and 15. Like I said, it's going to be a quick overview of the basics. Tess hinted a little bit of one of those two great principles, but I'm going to talk about the first one again here quick. And that is that it is very important that you put your ball in play at the start of the hole. And if you would play your own ball and don't touch it until you lift it from the hole, it's really, really hard for you to violate any rules under the rules of golf. Now, that's not always possible. Sometimes we, hit our golf ball in places that we can't find it or don't have the option of playing it as it lies. And so therefore the rules step in and tell us what we're allowed and not allowed to do. So let's talk a little bit about Rule 13, which is called ball played as it lies. The ball must be played as it lies. It's an outdoor game. Playing conditions vary from day to day, from course to course, from event to event. We have to, put up with the good breaks and the bad breaks equally. Sometimes you hit a ball perfectly down the middle of the fairway and you find yourself in a divot. And while that isn't the most fortunate thing that can happen, it is part of the game and it's part of the challenge. And so whenever we get asked as rules people, how come they don't have a rule that lets you take a relief for a divot in the middle of the fairway? One of the counterpoints is, if that were the case, then we probably should write a rule that says every time you hit it in the rough, you're not allowed to have a good lie. So just try and take the good breaks with the bad breaks as they come and put your head down and play hard, and all will ultimately end up in good shape at the end. So like I said, the ball has to be played as it lies, except as otherwise provided in the rules. And the reason why we say as otherwise provided in the rules is sometimes we accidentally move our ball and the rules are going to tell us what to do. And in that case, we would say the ball has to be replaced. And other cases, the rules would allow us to take relief from things. So in the first picture here on this slide, we find ourselves in a bunker, but our balls come to rest on a hot dog wrapper. Well, that's a movable obstruction, and we don't have to play it from there. We're allowed to take relief from that obstruction. The middle picture is a ball that's embedded in closely mown area. We're allowed to take relief from that. There's a rule that Tess will talk about here in a little bit that gives us relief for that. You know, sometimes we hit it into a water hazard. Obviously, might not be able to play that golf ball as it lies. So the rules step in and tell us how to proceed. Rule 13-2 deals with improving your lie, area of intended stance or swing or line of play. And it's basically going to say, look, there are some things that you aren't going to be allowed to do. In general, you know, when we find our ball that has come to rest somewhere on the golf course, we're not allowed to alter the conditions of the course to make it easier for us to play that golf ball. So let's run through a couple of examples. A player cannot improve or allow to be improved the position or lie of their ball. So in the picture, we've got a golf ball that's come to rest in the rough, and this player wants to make it a little easier for them to play. So they're going to step on the grass right behind the ball, give them a little easier path to make contact with that golf ball. Well, that would be a violation of 13-2 because we've improved our lie of our golf ball. We also can improve the area of our intended stance. So, you know, if we have a person, and the stance would be basically kind of where our feet come to rest. And so we have to be careful. I mean, we're allowed to take a stance, but we have to be careful that we're not doing too much manipulation of the ground or manipulation of things that are, you know, that are in and around us to make that stance easier for us to play. We're not allowed to alter conditions to make our swing easier. So here we have a caddy in the picture that's holding a branch back that allows this this gal to make a full backswing without any restrictions. And if the caddy wasn't there holding the tree back, then she would hit the branch on her backswing. Well, that's a clear violation of 13-2 that makes this swing easier for her to play. So we have to be careful not to do that. Another area that we have to be careful not to improve would be our line of play and a reasonable extension of that line of play beyond the hole. So in the picture on the right, we have a person who her ball doesn't rest in the bunker, but she has a bunker in between her and the hole. Well, to make it easier for her to play, because maybe she thinks she might, you know, just roll the ball through the bunker or something, she's gone and right on our line of play started to rake up footprints. Well, that's a violation of 13-2 because we're improving our line of play now. Another area we have to be careful not to improve is if we are doing something under the rules that causes us to drop a ball, maybe it's within 1 club length of the nearest point of relief, or maybe it's within 2 club lengths of where we hit it into a water hazard, a red water hazard, we cannot improve that area as well. So we can't go around and step down a whole bunch of irregularities or, you know, make that a lot smoother surface, or, you know, step on the grass and smooth all that out where we're eventually going to have to drop or place a ball. So we have to be careful not to improve those areas as well. So here's some videos of an example of someone who he's forcefully pressing that club down on the ground right behind the ball. That kind of creates a little bit of an easier shot. It essentially improves the lie of the ball. Now, there's a difference between pressing a club down like this gentleman's doing and lightly grounding a club. We're allowed to lightly ground a club anywhere except in a hazard. So in this case, he's gone a little too far and he's really pressed down on that ground and created a much better lie for his shot. Here's another example where the lady has a divot that's sort of half replaced right on her line of play. She's planning to play a little short shot, almost sort of chipping it or putting it almost across that area. And by replacing that divot and making that a little smoother turf for her, then she's improved her line of play, and that would be a rules violation. So that's 13-2. Now I want to cover a couple of slides just on 13-4, which is, okay, when we do find ourselves in a hazard, what are we allowed to do or not allowed to do? And Tess hinted at this earlier, but one of the areas on the golf course is called hazards. You've got the teeing ground, the putting green, you've got hazards, and you've got through the green. Well, hazards include a couple different things. They include bunkers and then any water hazards on the golf course, and that includes lateral water hazards. So whenever you see the term hazards in the rules, it does include a couple areas: bunkers, water hazards, lateral water hazards. Okay, if we find ourselves in a hazard, before we make a stroke at a ball that's in a hazard, we cannot test the condition of the hazard or any similar hazard. So if you look at the diagram on the right, if we find ourselves in a bunker that's behind the green, not only can we not test the condition of that bunker we're in, we also can't go test the condition of another bunker that might be, in front of the green, for instance. We are not allowed to touch the ground in a hazard or water in the water hazard with our hand or a club. So this is, like I said earlier, where we're allowed to lightly ground the club anywhere on the golf course, except when we find ourselves in a hazard. Now, if you accidentally have to use your hand or you use a club to prevent yourself from falling in a hazard or in a water hazard, there's an exception that says that's not going to be a penalty. But just remember not to ground your club in the act of hitting your shot. So here's a video that you'll see on the backswing here, this person's in a bunker, and on the backswing, their club hits the ground, and I'll show you in slow-mo there, hits the ground and pushes some sand away on the backswing. Well, that's a penalty because this occurs on the backswing. Tess talked a little bit about definitions at the beginning, but the definition of a stroke is the forward movement of the club with the intention to hit the ball. It doesn't say anything about the backswing. So on the backswing in a bunker or in a water hazard, we have to be careful not to ground our club on the sand or on the ground in a water hazard or hit the water. We're okay to do it during the stroke, which is the forward movement of the club, but not on the backswing. And then the final thing that we're not allowed to do is we're not allowed to touch or move a loose impediment lying in or touching the same hazard as our golf ball. So if we find ourselves in the bunker and there's a leaf sitting right beside our ball, or really a leaf or a twig or any loose impediment anywhere in the bunker that our ball is in, we're not allowed to move that. Okay, that's Rule 13. Now let's go on to Rule 15, which is a substituted ball or a wrong ball. The general rule 15-1 says a player has to hold out with the ball we played from the teeing ground. That's not always possible because sometimes we lose our golf ball, sometimes we hit it out of bounds, or sometimes there's another rule or reason that we would substitute a ball. Now, we're going to first talk a little bit about substituting a ball, and then we'll get into playing a wrong ball and what those penalties are. Okay, if we have lost the ball, then obviously the player has to substitute a ball. We haven't found it. We can't find the ball. There's no other way for us to proceed other than to substitute a ball. If we hit it out of bounds, we also have to substitute a ball, even though we might find that ball that's been hit out of bounds. As soon as the ball comes to rest out of bounds, it's no longer the ball in play. Therefore, we are required to go back and hit from where we last played from if we hit it out of bounds. And even though we might be using the same golf ball, technically under the rules, when we play again properly, we have substituted a new ball into play at that point. And then, whenever we also under the rules are allowed to substitute a ball, that would account for, hitting it into a water hazard, or maybe we've declared a ball unplayable or something that allows us to substitute a ball. So in general, we're going to hold out with the ball we played from the teeing ground unless something happens that causes us to substitute it. Now let's talk about a wrong ball. Okay, if a player makes a stroke or strokes at a wrong ball, they incur a penalty of 2 strokes. Now here we have a young Tiger Woods over on the right. he's hit his tee shot out of bounds. And because the ball is out of bounds, it's no longer the ball in play. So if Tiger were to hit this shot over here, Tiger has now made a stroke at a wrong ball. And it says, look in the rule, it says if a competitor makes a stroke or strokes at a wrong ball, he incurs a penalty of 2 strokes. So it doesn't matter necessarily how many times we hit that same wrong ball during the play of a hole. We are forced to go back and correct it, and we only add a penalty of 2 strokes. No matter if we hit a single wrong ball once or that wrong ball twice or 3 times. Now, if we hit multiple wrong balls, then we would have multiple penalties apply. The competitor is required to correct this mistake, because if you've holed out with the wrong ball, you've never played the original or a correctly substituted ball, then we have no idea how to come up with a score for you. So that means we have to correct. And how do we correct it? Well, we go back and we find the original ball or the correct ball and play it from there. Or if for some reason we can't find the original or correct ball, then we proceed under the rules, such as the lost ball or ball out of bounds rules. If we fail to correct this mistake, before we tee off on the next hole, or if this is the last hole of the round where we played the wrong ball, we have to declare our intention to correct before we leave the putting green. Otherwise, we're going to be disqualified. So if I play a wrong ball on the 5th hole and I don't correct it before I tee off on the 6th hole, then I would get disqualified. If I am finishing up on my 18th hole and I figure out that I've played a wrong ball, after I've holed out on the 18th hole, I have to announce my intention to correct that mistake before I leave the putting green of my final hole. Otherwise, I'm going to get disqualified. And like I said, strokes made by a competitor with a wrong ball do not count in his scores. So if somewhere along the way, for instance, I hit the ball off the tee into the rough, and I go over there and I play a shot from the rough up onto the green, and then I putt out on the, hit the putt on the green and then putt out and hole out, and then I realize that wasn't my golf ball, and I figure out that I must have played the wrong ball somewhere back in the rough on my second shot, I do not count those 3 shots I hit the wrong ball with. All I'm going to do is go back and correct, find my original ball, play from there, and add 2 strokes. We got a good video that talks about, okay, because this sometimes will happen in a high school meet. If the wrong ball does belong to another competitor, how do we proceed? Well, the owner has to place a ball on the spot from which the wrong ball was first played and play on. So if you find a situation where somebody has hit your golf ball and you are certain of this and you find evidence of it, you're not going to get penalized, obviously, but you need to know how to proceed. Well, you're going to place a ball at the spot from which your ball was wrongly played and go ahead and play on. And if you don't know that exact spot, then you can estimate it. So just do the best you can on getting the ball back into position and play on from there. And if you don't think this happens at the highest levels of golf, we got a video from the U.S. Open in 2014 where Hunter Mahan and Jamie Donaldson each played a wrong ball on the 18th hole, and it happened to be each other's golf ball. And you'll hear a little bit of an explanation from the USGA rules experts on this.
We have an unusual situation here on 18. Hunter Mahan.
Okay, could you guys hear that?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to start back over then at least with that slide. So. Okay, here we go.
We have an unusual situation here on 18. Hunter Mahan and Jamie Donaldson are going backwards because Hunter Mahan's hit the wrong ball. And Thomas Pagel, before we get into the hows and whys this happens, now what happens?
Well, it's, we certainly don't see it too often at this level, but if you play a ball other than your ball, it's a 2-stroke penalty in stroke play, and you have to go back and correct. So obviously it's very important to mark your golf ball. usually players at this level have their unique markings, but in this case, Jamie and Hunter played each other's golf balls by mistake. So they noticed it when they got up onto the putting green, notified the referee, and went back to play again. So 2-stroke penalty and keep going.
It is a sinking feeling. The caddy gets partial blame for that, for sure. Of course, the final responsibility is on the player. Actually, I did it in Akron, Ohio on the 10th hole. I drove it down the left side of the fairway. It's a blind second shot or blind landing area. My playing partner drove it down the right side, and somehow my ball was on the right of the fairway and his was on the left. And we never looked. We did the same thing, had to go back, 2-shot penalty. But
Paul, everybody should do it once because you will never do it again.
Well, you got that right.
I've done it once. And you will never do it again. That's all I can say.
It's just one of those things that happens. How it happens when you drive it in the fairway, it's got to happen in an area like this where you can't see where your ball ends up. And something happened, maybe a funny bounce that caused Hunter to end up on the left side when he thought he was on the right.
So you try to regroup, but it's just so baffling because even most amateurs that are listening and watching this morning, I've got a 3, you've got a 2, and even if you've got a 3, I've got a mark that's not the same as yours.
Right. You should. There's no excuse for making the mistake. But I have a question: have they hold out and then go to the 10th tee, the next tee, number 1? What's the penalty if they don't catch it?
Yeah, so Paul, again, this is a rule where you have to correct before you play from the next teeing ground. So had they gone to 1 and teed off, they both would have been disqualified.
What if they'd have hold out?
Both of them.
If they would have hold out, they would have been okay. The trigger point is when you tee off from the next teeing ground. So they put the ball in the hole. They still could have walked over the first tee and come back and corrected.
So if they hold out, they're still going back to the fairway then?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so there's an example of, guys at the highest level, accidentally playing a wrong ball. In this case, they played each other's golf ball. And as you saw, they went back, found where they should have been playing from, found the correct spot. And in some cases, maybe had to estimate it if they didn't know exactly, dropped the ball and played on and corrected. And they each added 2 strokes to their score for the hole for playing the wrong ball. So that's the wrong ball stuff. Now I'm going to hand it over to Caitlin to talk about Rule 18 and Rule 20.
All right. Thanks, Chad. 1 second here. I'll just get my PowerPoint going. All right. Can you see that all right?
Yep, we're good.
All right. So I will be covering ball at rest moved, lifting, dropping, and placing the golf ball, and then nearest point of relief. All right, so Rule 18, ball at rest moved. So in general, if you accidentally cause your ball to move, like the video that Chad showed previously, maybe you're walking in the rough and you accidentally step on the golf ball, or if you lift it when you're not permitted, you're gonna have to add a penalty stroke in that case. And if you do that, if you move your golf ball accidentally, it'll have to be replaced on the original spot. Now, if for some reason you don't replace the golf ball, say you or your playing partner didn't know the rule, then in that case, that 1 penalty stroke ends up turning into 2 penalty strokes. So not 1 + 2 = 3, just 2. So, but in some cases, the ball might move because of outside factors such as wind, water, or possibly even gravity. And this happens most often on the putting green. And in these cases, you're gonna play it where it ends up and there's no penalty. All right, so new last year, the USGA and the R&A released a new local rule for accidental movement of a ball on a putting green. And what a local rule means is that the committee has to have it in place in order for it to be applied during the competition. You can find the exact language for this local rule, that accidental movement, on usga.org. And it's there for players to reference, but it's also there for committees to copy and paste the text that you can use on your rule sheet. So it's there for kind of two reasons there. And just in summary, what the local rule says is on the putting green only, there's no penalty if you accidentally cause your ball to move. And in that case, you just have to put it back and continue playing on. Now you probably are thinking of quite a few examples of accidentally moving the golf ball, but I have a pretty good one for you here. So take a look at this video.
No penalty for the thoughts running through his mind. Well, if you're going to break the rules, you might as well break all of them. Poor old Mike Clayton there.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the local rule is not in place during the time of that video, so he did get penalized for that. But it was a heck of a try. All right, so the next rule, Rule 20, we're going to cover lifting, dropping, and placing the golf ball. So if you're lifting a ball and it's required to be replaced, so on the putting green most often, but maybe you might be checking to identify the golf ball if it's yours or not, then you're required to mark the position of the golf ball. And if you don't do that, then there's a penalty stroke. Now, if you're lifting a ball, but it's not required to be replaced, it might be a good idea to mark it, but it's not required. And a good example of this would be a situation where your golf ball ends up on a cart path. You're not required to mark where the golf ball is on the path when you're taking relief, but it might be a good idea to help you find where your nearest point of relief is going to be. So there is a proper way to drop the golf ball. Here's just a couple of examples. You want to make sure that you're standing tall, you hold your arm out to shoulder height, and you drop the golf ball. Now here's an example of a ball that was dropped improperly. And you can see that the two yellow lines show you where her arm should have been, and then she's clearly below that line. And this was actually an LPGA player. She was taking relief. She continued to play the hole, and then after the round, they notified her that, hey, you dropped improperly, so you're going to have to add a penalty stroke to your score in that hole. Now, there are certain situations where you drop a ball and the ball strikes the ground and then something happens that requires you to then re-drop the golf ball. One of those situations might be that it rolls in a position where there's still interference. So again, say you're taking relief from the cart path, you drop the ball, and then when you take your stance, your feet are still on the cart path. In that case, you'd re-drop the golf ball. It might be where it rolls into a wrong part of the golf course. And Tess went over the different parts of the golf course, but an example might be you are taking relief from a sprinkler head, you drop the golf ball, and it rolls into a bunker. Another situation might be that it rolls more than 2 club lengths from where it struck the course. And the important part of this, the important thing to note here is it's where it struck the course. So it's not necessarily where your maximum relief area would have been. It's where it struck the golf course. You get 2 club lengths from that point. Another situation might be is the ball rolls nearer the hole than the reference point. And the word reference point can mean nearest point of relief. It can mean where it crossed the water hazard, or in some situations, it could be the original spot. And so if it does any of these things again, you end up placing the golf ball. And it could be a combination of these. It could be a situation where you still have interference, so you drop it again, and then it rolls outside the 2 club lengths. In that case, it counts as 2 drops, and so you'd be into placing the golf ball. All right, so nearest point of relief. This is used in several situations that Tess will go into here shortly, but it's obstructions, abnormal ground conditions, which are casual water, ground under repair, and then in the rare case, sometimes you end up on a wrong putting green. So I'm going to show you, there's 4 videos here that really demonstrate nearest point of relief and things you should and shouldn't do in this case.
The nearest point of relief is the spot the shortest distance away from where your ball lies, either left of, right of, or behind it, that isn't closer to the hole, and where, if your ball was there, you could make a stroke at it without any interference to your resulting lie, stance, and swing. The nearest point of relief from the cart path for this right-handed player is to the left, because his ball would shift a shorter distance in that direction, but not for this left-handed player. For the same reason, his nearest point of relief is to the right of the cart path. The nearest point of relief from this ground under repair for both right and left-handed players is to the left. But notice, the nearest point of relief is closer to the ball's original position for the right-handed player. Sometimes your nearest point of relief will be at a spot where your resulting line of play or lie is to your disadvantage. This player would have a much clearer shot to the green from left of the cart path, but his nearest point of relief is to the right. If he decides to take free relief from this path, he is not allowed to choose the nicer of the points on either side of the path. He must start at the nearest point of relief, even if it is less than desirable, and drop his ball within 1 club length of that spot. This player might be better off playing his ball as it lies from the path.
All right, so there you have ball at rest moved, lifting, dropping, and placing, and then a few of those helpful videos on nearest point of relief. So I'll pass it on to Tess.
Thank you, Caitlin. That was very good, some very good videos. We appreciate you guys having those videos. It definitely makes it easier when we're able to see the videos, and it puts a little more clarity on it. So thank you both for going over those rules there. We're going to continue on now with Rule 25, which is abnormal ground conditions, embedded ball, and wrong putting green. And Caitlin and Chad both kind of gave you some examples or talked about wrong putting green or embedded ball a little bit. But abnormal ground conditions might be where you actually find that you're having to use this rule most often on the golf course. And except when the ball is in a water hazard or a lateral water hazard, a player may take relief of abnormal ground conditions through the green, in a bunker, on a putting green, on the teeing ground. The relief is granted in the form of a drop within 1 club length of and not nearer the hole than the nearest point of relief. And Caitlin's video did a great job there explaining how you would find your nearest point of relief. That's probably the best part of this rule that you can have, is the procedure part, and then also the definition of what a normal ground condition might be. Something here to note, if you are in a bunker, sometimes we have some heavy rain and we get some standing water in the bunker. You may take relief of this abnormal ground condition in the bunker, but you need to stay within the bunker, and again, find your nearest point of relief and no closer to the hole, and then take your drop and continue on. You do have the option to take relief from the bunker and get out of the bunker, but incur a penalty stroke. So most of the time, if the bunkers are in pretty bad conditions, a local rule or some sort of suspension will be taking place. But this is a normal ground condition, embedded ball, and wrong putting green, Rule 25. It's probably a good one to kind of review a little bit because you will come into contact with this a little bit. Now we're going to cover Rule 26, which is water hazards, and it does also include lateral water hazard. And we're going to go over both of these two water hazard options and also differences. So the big thing to think about here and to put a key term in is that you must have knowledge or virtual certainty that your ball is in the water hazard if the ball cannot be found. So basically what that's saying is if you're not completely certain or virtually certain that the ball is in the hazard, you must then proceed under Rule 27-1, which we'll cover here in a minute, which is lost ball, and play your ball as near as possible as the spot from which the original ball was last played. And this might come into effect a little bit if you have a blind shot, kind of similar to the players playing the wrong ball. You can't really see where your ball lands. There's a water hazard up there, but there might also be some fescue before the water hazard. You must be certain or virtually certain that that ball is in the hazard in order to proceed with your relief options with penalty. If the ball is in a hazard, a yellow hazard, there are 2 options. If the ball is in a water hazard, you have 4 options, and we're going to go over both of those here in the next few slides. Water hazards, we're going to cover yellow stakes and lines first. If a ball is in a hazard marked yellow, you may, I said 2 options, and I'm going to go over B and C first and then talk about A here in a minute, but you may play under Rule 27-1 by playing a ball as near as possible at the spot from which the original ball was last played. I'm going to have a video here that will kind of show you that in a little bit more detail. Or you may drop a ball behind the water hazard, keeping the point at which the original ball last crossed the margin of the water hazard directly between the hole and the spot on which the ball is dropped, with no limit to how far behind the water hazard the ball may be dropped. Now, option A is also an option for both the yellow water hazard and the red lateral water hazard. You may play the ball as it lies with no penalty if you have that option. A lot of times if a water hazard, it's not rained a lot and your ball is sitting up on the bank, or you may still be in the hazard, but you also have the option to go in there and try to hit the ball out of there. The key there is that you may not ground your club in order to hit that shot, and Chad covered that a little bit. So you may play the ball as it lies, but if you are in the hazard within those yellow lines or red lines and stakes, you must not ground your club when you're taking the shot. So here's a little graphic that kind of helps explain your relief options a little bit with yellow stakes and lines for water hazard. We have player who hits their ball from number 2 here. The number 2, they hit their ball, it crosses at point A, and then it crosses at point B, hits over here by the tree, but then bounces back into the water at point C. So the question is where did the ball last cross the hazard margin? And the answer is actually C. So even though it first crossed here at A and then it crossed here at B, the last part of the margin that it actually crossed was C. So the option for relief would be now here at point C. And the player can always come back here and play again from position 2. Or if there wasn't much water here and they wanted to take their shoes and socks off and hit from here, they could definitely do that as well. But the most common option is to take this point that is between the flag stick and where the ball last crossed the margin, and you can go back as far as you would like. Many times we see juniors come right up to the hazard line and drop as close to the hazard as possible. Sometimes this isn't the greatest idea because the course might be in an incline there might be some longer grass. It's really advantageous for the player to find maybe a yardage that they like further back away from the hazard or a flat spot, and then drop their ball there and continue to play. And I've got a video here that I'm going to pull up.
The 17th hole at Scioto Country Club is a beautiful downhill par 3 with a water hazard in front of the green that players must carry if they want to find success. On this hole, the water hazard is marked yellow. which means if players don't carry the hazard with their tee shot, their next stroke must be played from over here on this side of the hazard, even if the original stroke landed here by the green before rolling back into the hazard. Now, when players decide where to play their next stroke, because this water hazard is marked yellow, Rule 26.1 only provides two options, both under penalty of 1 stroke. The first option is to play under stroke and distance. That means returning to the spot of the previous stroke. And on a par 3, that's likely to be right here at the tee. Or he can drop behind the hazard on a straight line formed by the hole and where the ball last crossed into the hazard. And this week at the 37th U.S. Senior Open Championship, we've added a local rule to give players one additional option. There's a dropping zone that players can use for 1 penalty stroke, and in the first round, nearly 10% of the field used this dropping zone as their option. No matter which option the players choose, the next stroke must successfully negotiate the water hazard, or the players once again will need to pick among the options I've just mentioned. Now, if you're wondering why I haven't talked about the 2 club length option or how a player can drop up by the green, there's a common misconception.
All right, so he was going to start going into the lateral water hazard a little bit, but we're going to come back to the PowerPoint presentation here and talk about the relief options for a red stakes in line lateral water hazard, and then I have another video that will kind of help clarify that a little bit. If your ball is in a hazard marked red, you may again, play the ball as it lies with no penalty. And sometimes that is an option here for the lateral water hazards. Again, the creek bed isn't filled with water, or you see the ball sitting up. That's always an option, but again, you must not ground your club, so you need to be mindful of that. Or you may play using the first 2 options available for water hazards, which is yellow stakes and lines. Or you can drop a ball outside the water hazard within 2 club lengths of and not near the hole, then the point where the original ball last crossed the margin of the water hazard, or a point on the opposite side of the water hazard equal distance from the hole. So we're going to use this graphic here to talk about the options. So the player hits their ball from position 2, and they hit it to position 1. So the first option is that this is not full of water. They can get down in there and hit the ball, not grounding their club, and there's no penalty for that. The second option would be to go back to where they first hit that ball into the hazard and drop it there and continue play. The third option, which always isn't an option with the lateral water hazards or red stakes and lines, and that's something to just be mindful of, but sometimes it is an option where you can take the point where it last crossed that margin and you can go back as far as you want, keeping that point between you and the flag stick. And then your 4th and 5th option is taking that point where it last crossed the hazard, and then you have your relief, nearest point of relief, 2 club lengths, and drop. Or again, you can go to the opposite margin of the water hazard, equal distance from the hole, and you can drop over there. So those are your options for the red stakes and line lateral water hazard, and I have another video here that I think goes through it pretty well.
When your ball goes in a lateral water hazard, you have 4 ways to get it out for a penalty of 1 stroke. 2 of these choices are the same ones you have for getting your ball out of a regular water hazard. 1, you can play under stroke and distance. Since this player just played from the fairway, he must drop a ball as close as possible to where he made his last stroke, but not nearer the hole. And 2, you can drop a ball behind the lateral water hazard anywhere on a straight line drawn from the hole through the spot where your ball crossed over the hazard's red margin as it went in. The third choice is the one players most frequently use. You can drop a ball within 2 club lengths of and not nearer the hole than where your ball crossed over the hazard's red margin as it went in. Your 4th choice is to find a spot the same distance from the hole as where your ball crossed over the hazard's red margin that is on the opposite side of the hazard, and drop a ball within 2 club lengths of that spot, not nearer the hole. In addition to the 2 choices you have to get your ball out of a regular water hazard and the 4 choices you have from a lateral water hazard, you are also allowed to play your ball from a water hazard with no penalty stroke as long as you are careful not to ground your club or touch the water with it before you make your stroke. When your ball is in a water hazard, being aware of all your choices will help you pick the best one available to you. There is no choice that is always the best because water hazards and other factors can vary so greatly.
Okay, so hopefully those 2 videos kind of help clarify a little bit. The USGA.org website is where I got those 2 videos. I just went online and they have a lot of great videos that are available at no charge for people to go and just view and kind of help clarify things. So USGA.org is a great resource to be able to go and see some of those videos and kind of help clarify some of these rules if you have questions. We're rounding the home stretch here. We have a couple more rules that we're going to talk about. Rule 27-1, ball lost or out of bounds. We've covered this a little bit earlier in the definitions, but again, a ball is deemed lost if it is not found or identified by player within 5 minutes of a search period. The player has made a stroke at a provisional ball, provided the provisional ball is equal to or closer to the hole than the original ball is believed to be. And to note here is if you play a provisional ball for a lost ball or a ball out of bounds, you may play that provisional ball all the way up to where you feel like the original ball is lost. And then you must go search for that original ball. If you continue to play that provisional ball at the spot where the original ball is believed to be, and then you have to actually abandon that original ball and the provisional ball becomes the ball in play. And we'll talk about that here in the next slide a little bit, but that's basically point B there. Point C is the player has put into play under stroke and distance penalty. And D is the player has put another ball into play under Rule 18-1, 25-1C, or 26-1B. And those are the rules that we just covered a little bit earlier in this PowerPoint presentation, which talks about different circumstances. And finally, the ball has made a stroke at a substituted ball. And a ball out of bounds is, if the ball is out of bounds, the player must play a ball under penalty of 1 stroke. And again, as near as possible at the spot from which the original ball was last played. Provisional ball, we'll just go through this a little bit more, is a ball played under Rule 27-2 for a ball that may be lost outside of a water hazard or may be out of bounds. Again, there's a procedure element here that is important to note and something that the player should get used to doing when utilizing this rule, provisional ball. They must announce to his marker or fellow competitor in stroke play that he or she intends to play a provisional ball and play the provisional ball before he or she goes forward to search for the original ball. A player may play the provisional ball up to the point in which the original ball is likely to be. So those 2 procedure points are pretty important. In order to make sure that we're doing it properly, you should say, I'm going to be hitting a provisional ball in case my ball is out of bounds or potentially lost. It's a good idea to use a different number or different type of golf ball, so in case you hit it in the same similar area, you know which is your provisional ball and which one is your original ball. And then the second part of that is you must hit the provisional before you go and search for that original ball. And the last rule that we're going to talk a little bit here is ball unplayable. If the player deems their ball to be unplayable, they must, under penalty of 1 stroke, proceed under the stroke and distance rule, which is 27-1. We just covered that. Or drop a ball behind the point where the ball lay, keeping that point directly between the hole and the spot on which the ball is dropped, with no limit to how far behind that point the ball may be dropped. And that's similar to the water hazard where you can keep the point where the ball lay between you and the flag stack and you may go back as far as you want. Or you may also drop within 2 club lengths of the spot where the ball lay, but no nearer to the hole. And the note here would be that the player is the only person who can deem the ball unplayable. And I actually call this another golfer-friendly rule. We see a lot of times out on the golf course where a player is in high grass or fescue or their ball is underneath maybe an evergreen or a tree that has really low branches. And for them to try to get in there and get that ball out of that situation could potentially be 2, 3, 4 strokes. And if you've deemed that your ball is unplayable in that situation, then instead of trying to take multiple strokes to get out of that situation, you can now say that ball is unplayable and look at your options under 1 stroke to possibly get out of that situation. It's not always going to be the case, but it's definitely something to understand how the ball unplayable rule is to be utilized, and it can potentially save you when you're out there if you have a situation where you're unable to get the club on the ball. So that is it for this PowerPoint presentation. It's again designed to be kind of an introduction to the rules of golf. I know we went into a little bit of in depth on some of the rules, so if you do have any questions, here's the Iowa Golf Association office number. They're a valuable resource for the rules of golf, and there's their email address as well. You can find this information at iowagolf.org, and they're available as well to help answer any questions. And then here's our Iowa PGA office as well. Our number is available with our emails too. 2 great associations that are working together to try to help high school juniors in any capacity that they might be able to need with the rules of golf. We wish you all a great season upcoming this spring. And if you're playing in the fall, good luck this fall as well. And as I mentioned, as the changes for the rules of golf get a little closer for 2019, we will be potentially having more resources available to help your teams learn those changes. For the most part, I think they're all very golfer friendly. We'll help try to alleviate some confusion and help everyone kind of move faster out on the golf course. And they are very golfer friendly. So again, on behalf of the Iowa Golf Association and the Iowa PGA, thank you for watching this. Feel free to call if you have any questions. And again, have a great spring and summer, fall season.